those joining us by WebEx. We do have a busy agenda today. I'm filling in for Chair Baumgartner, so bear with me today. First item is a budget hearing on the Kansas State School for the Blind. Do we have our staff member with us?
Yes.
Norma?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So Norma, if you would give us a briefing on that, we'd appreciate it.
Certainly. And everyone on the committee should have the Kansas State School for the Blind budget analysis in front of them. It's a black and white packet. It can also be found online if you don't have the hard copy with you. And I'll note that the Superintendent, John Harding, for the School for the Blind will also is all online and can provide testimony after I do my overview. So with all budget analysis, you see the table, the front page has the operating expenditures and capital improvements. As a quick agency overview, the School for the Blind is located in Kansas City, Kansas, and is the catalyst and leader in the development of programs and practices to serve students up to the age of 21 for vision services. And its mission, to fulfill its mission, is three main programs: administrative services, instructional services, and support services. Those are those same programs you saw in the School for the Deaf. And the school serves as the center for state-of-the-art education for Kansas children who are either blind or visually impaired, and as the training and support base for teachers across the state who work with children with sensory impairments. And the next couple pages are those major issues, as well as the quick key budget points. On page 856, you'll see the performance measures. And there you'll see the number of students served statewide, students receiving services on campus, and the percent of students achieving IEP goals and objectives. The page after that is your 10-year review, and then the summary of operating budget. And on page 859 is where I'll start my main analysis. That should say budget overview, and at the top, and then fiscal year 2021, the current year. Again, there were two changes to the approved budget, the budget approved by the 2020 legislature. First, there was a $9 reimbursement for the coronavirus relief fund, kind of swapping some SGF that was reappropriated then into fiscal year 2021. And there was a decrease of about $40,000, again, due to the governor's allotments. At the bottom of the page, you'll see that the agency requested a total budget of $7.8 million, including $5.7 million SGF, and an operating budget of $6.9 million, including $5.7 million SGF. The revised operating budget is an all funds increase of about $63,000, or 0.9% above the approved amount. And that includes a special revenue fund increase of about $63,000, or 6%, primarily due to the filling of new positions in fiscal year 2021. And there's a revised capital improvements expenditures budget of $940,000, all from the state institutions building fund. And this is a decrease of about $6,000 below the approved amount due to the deletion of funding that was reappropriated. Turning to page 860, you'll see the governor's recommends a total budget of $8.3 million, including $5.7 million SGF, and an operating budget of $7.2 million, including $5.7 million SGF in fiscal year 2021. This is a federal funds increase of about $350,000, or 5.1% above the agency's revised estimate. That's attributable to the Office of Recovery awarding the school about $460,000 from federal COVID-19 related funding, so the coronavirus relief fund, including about $350,000 for operational expenditures. And you'll see a change then as well in her capital improvement budget. The governor recommends an increase of about $108,000. Again, that's that coronavirus relief fund dollars from the Office of Recovery. You saw similar numbers in the School for the Deaf's budget. At the bottom of 860, you'll see the governor's allotments. For this agency, it totals about $40,000, and it's CAPERS Death and Disability, which was that statewide CAPERS Death and Disability moratorium, and some more coronavirus relief swap funding. And I can pause there for questions on fiscal year 2021 or move on to fiscal year 2022.
If you'll just go ahead and do 22, and then we'll take questions at the end, if that's okay, committee. Thank you.
Certainly. So turning to page 861, you'll see the agency is requesting an operating budget of $6.9 million, including $5.8 million SGF for fiscal year 2022. This is an all funds increase of about $55,000 or 0.8%, including an SGF increase of about $92,000 or 1.6% above the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. This is primarily due to an increase in salaries and wages due to the filling of positions, as well as, of course, the base budget, including the Olathe Public Schools increase that you see. You see the similar increase in the School for the Deaf. That's a statutory increase. And there is some shifting from special revenue funds to the state general fund for certain expenditures, which is why you see a larger increase in SGF. And the agency is requesting capital improvement expenditures of about $919,000, all from the State Institutions Building Fund. And the governor concurs with the agency's fiscal year 2022 request. And then turning to page 862, you'll see the agency submitted a reduced resources budget totaling $584,000, all SGF, with 7.0 FT positions. And the governor, again, did not recommend reducing the agency's budget for fiscal year 2022. Again, just like the School for the Deaf. And then I can either move into program detail or I can move on to capital improvements.
Norma, go ahead and do the program detail, please.
Certainly. So turning a couple pages to 865, you'll see the program detail. Just like in the School for the Deaf, there are three main programs: administrative services, instructional services, support services. You see the breakdown for fiscal year 2022 for the all funds, and then the SGF, and then you see the FTE over a number of years. Starting on 866, you'll see administrative services. The governor's recommending expenditures of about $633,000, including $283,000 SGF for fiscal year 2021 for administrative services. And this is where you're going to see that $350,000 that the Office of Recovery allocated to the school. And that's why you see an increase above the agency's request for fiscal year 2021, which is at the bottom of the page there. And turning to page 867, you see that the agency requested about $276,000, all SGF, for fiscal year 2022 for administrative services. This is a slight decrease from the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate, primarily due to a decrease in attorney's fees, which will likely decrease in fiscal year 2022 due to the end of an employee-related case in fiscal year 2021. And the governor concurred with the agency's request for administrative services. Still in 867, you'll see the description of some of those instructional services programs. And their budget request begins on 868. And then on 869, you'll see the governor's, the agency requested about $5 million, including $4.2 million SGF for instructional services in fiscal year 2021. This was an SGF decrease of about $73,000 and an all funds decrease of about $3,000 below the approved amount. And that was due to the elimination of capital outlay and other assistance expenditures, partially offset by increases in salaries and wages. And you'll see on 869 that the governor concurred with the agency's revised estimate in fiscal year 2021 for instructional services. For fiscal year 2022, the agency is requesting $5 million, including $4.2 million SGF. It's an all funds increase of about $11,000 and an SGF increase of about $8,900 above the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. And that's primarily due to an increase in retirement contributions, and you'll see that statewide across a number of budgets. And again, the governor concurred with the agency's request for fiscal year 2022 for instructional services. Support services starts on 869, but the budget breakdown is on 870. And here the agency requested $1.6 million, including $1.3 million SGF in fiscal year 2021. This was an all funds increase of about $62,000 or 4.1%, and an SGF increase of about $70,000 or 5.7% above the approved amount. And this increase is primarily attributable to an increase in salaries and wages. And you do see some shifting of FTE. So that shifting kind of FTE was to increase housekeeping positions in the support services program for the School for the Blind. And the governor concurred with the agency's revised estimate in fiscal year 2021. For fiscal year 2022, the agency requested $1.6 million, including $1.4 million SGF. It's an all funds increase of about $50,000 or 3.2%, and an SGF increase of about $90,000 or 7.0% above the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. That's primarily due to the increase, again, for salaries and wages for the 2.0 FTE positions shifted into support services for those housekeeping positions, and it's partially offset by a decrease in expenditures for recruiting. And this is where you see some of that shifting of expenditures. So there was some shifting of contractual services from the local services reimbursement fund to the SGF. And the governor concurred with the agency's request for fiscal year 2022. And I can either pause there or finish my presentation with the capital improvements.
Please go ahead and finish.
Certainly. So the last couple pages, you'll see the capital improvements. Like the School for the Deaf, the capital improvements are all from the State Institutions Building Fund. The agency is requesting $940,000 in fiscal year 2021. This is a decrease of about $6,000 below the approved amount, and that's just due to the deletion of funding that was reappropriated. Also, like the School for the Deaf, you see three major programs for capital improvements: safety and security systems, campus boilers and HVAC, and rehab and repair. And in fiscal year 2021, the governor did increase the capital improvements budget by about $108,000 or 11.5% above the agency's revised estimate. And again, that's attributable to the Office of Recovery allocating funding for HVAC plasma ionization devices to limit the spread of COVID-19 for the School for the Blind. And on last page, 872, you'll see for fiscal year 2022 that the agency requested about $919,000. Again, all SIBF for fiscal year 2022. This is a decrease of about $21,000 or 2.3% below the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. The governor did concur with the agency's request for fiscal year 2022, and I'll just note some shifting of expenditures between those three programs. So in safety and security systems, you'll see a decrease due to the completion of several systems upgrades and a shift just to ongoing maintenance costs. And that decrease is offset by some increases for HVAC replacement and the replacing of the back gate and adding more perimeter fencing, which are under the rehabilitation and repair. And I can stand there for any questions.
Thank you, Norma. Any questions from the committee at this time? Yes, Senator Petty.
I don't know if this is helpful for the committee, and maybe we went over, and I missed it when we went over the School for the Deaf, but Norma, you did refer to their salary schedule and how it's tied to Olathe, and you might, could you expand on why the School for the Blind in KCK is tied to Olathe?
Certainly. So members of the committee, under KSA 76-11A16, and then the School for the Deaf is KSA 76-11A17. Teachers and licensed personnel employed for the School for the Blind and then the School for the Deaf are compensated at the same rate as USD 233 Olathe, so that's just the statute. This was a $1,200 increase, so it corresponds to the year prior. So Olathe's fiscal year 2020 increase would be the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf's fiscal year 2022 increase. And it was $1,200 in the fiscal year 2022 base budget request. So in prior years, the agency requested this funding via an enhancement request. Beginning in fiscal year 2022, you see this built into the base budget for both the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf. And it was about $1,200 per teacher. And in the School for the Blind budget, it was just under $40,000.
Thank you. And I appreciate that because I think that helps the committee to understand why that is tied to that. This is just kind of a laughable moment. So Norma, when you were going over the budget on page 859 and you talked about an increase of $9. I thought, okay, in the scheme of things, $9, but I think it just reflects how detailed schools have to be with the money they get and how they account for it. So thank you.
Any other questions for Norma at this time? Norma, can you stick around until the end in case some other questions pop up?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Committee, we also have with us John Harding, who's the superintendent for the Kansas State School for the Blind. Welcome, Superintendent Harding. We look forward to your presentation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee. Hoping you can hear me. Happy to return $9 to the state and to be accountable for the money that we receive. We're grateful for the support that we have. I am the superintendent, John Harding's School for the Blind. I just want to express our deep and sincere appreciation for the state's commitment to our school and the students who are blind and low vision across this state. We simply request the committee concur with the governor's fiscal year 2022 budget request. The School for the Blind offers students a voice in deciding where, what, how, and from whom their children receive special education services. We're an important lifeline for these parents and students. While COVID has forced many schools to close, we've been open in person since August, and we have a robust field service team that's also delivered on-site services across the states to students in their home, their communities, since August. And in January alone, I think it's important to note that our field service specialists have provided direct instruction to 66 students, technical assistance to 36 teachers, and we visited 59 school districts in 38 counties. That was in January alone. Just briefly, I'd like to point out that we are innovating and improving in important ways. In the last 2 years, we've installed a state-of-the-art navigation system. We have partnered with Microsoft Teams to offer the only computer science course that's accessible to blind and low vision for Python and Java. We've created an accessible makerspace and a mobile STEM unit. We're having a lot of fun taking that across the state to both children who are blind, low vision, and regular ed students as well. We opened a preschool. We've expanded our low vision clinics. We offer a statewide library and a deafblind project. And last year, through a public-private partnership, we built a beautiful, accessible new playground on our campus. Really, in summary, we could not do these things without the support and the generosity of our state. I would ask that you support the governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2022. We are very grateful for your help. We appreciate the funds that the state provides us. And I would ask your consideration, and I appreciate you allowing me to present. I will stand for any questions the committee has.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions, committee? Yes, Senator Petty.
Thank you, Superintendent Harding, for being here. And I was just curious about the students that live on campus. So are there students back on campus? Are they still on campus? Are they back on campus? And could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Madam Chair, committee, we have offered on-site instruction virtually the whole year. There was a 2-week period at the beginning of the year where we did a little bit of professional development, and we did a week of remote, and then we offered our campus for any student that wanted to come back. We knew that was important for parents. We believe the state board was in support of that, and I would say about 80% of our students returned, and at present we only have, I believe, I would say 95% of our students at present are with this campus. About half of those students are day students. That means they come and go, and about half are dormitory students. So they stay with us Sunday through Friday. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And then I was excited to see about the opening of the preschool. Is it both, are the families that are taking advantage of it, are they both in person and virtual?
Madam Chair, committee, the preschool is offered as a program for day students. So they're not remote, excuse me, they're not in our dormitory. They're very young. They're 3 and 4 year olds. So they're coming in as day students and then returning home once the program is ended.
Thank you. I didn't think they were being housed there. It's quite a responsibility.
Committee, any other questions for either Superintendent Harding or Norma? Seeing none, thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Norma, for the information. We will now close the hearing on the school for the blind, and move on to the next agenda item, which is we are going to be taking up the deliberation on the budgets that we've heard previously. Namely, we're going to start with the Kansas State Department of Education budget. And committee, we had a presentation on this from Deputy Commissioner Ninswander last Monday. So if you want to take a moment and get that documentation out. We will open it up for any questions, comments as we work through the budget. Yes, Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my only comments would be is that having been an educator and being on this committee in the past and then within the legislative process, all of the items that the Department of Education enhancements are interested are all very, very important items. But I think we should keep in mind that the governor has fully funded the base budget for in both 21 and 22, which is so important for us maintaining our responsibility, particularly as we were directed under Gannon. And this is the primary, I believe, that school districts and that are most important of having funded. The enhancement areas have not been depleted. They have only not been enhanced. And so I think as we deliberate, we need to keep that in mind, because looking at other departments' budgets throughout the administration, there are lots of requests for enhancements, but most are not being, or almost none are being considered because of the fact that we are in a very tight budget and we do need to show that we are being fiscally responsible. So those are just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Yes, Senator Sykes.
And thank you, Madam Chair. I would just concur with Senator Petty. You know, I think our most important thing is that we're funding the schools to meet the Gannon requirements. And these are all great programs, but they were in addition to so enhancements. But, you know, if we fund our base budget, then moving forward, we will have more money for these types of initiatives.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Senator Dietrich.
I think I would probably concur that I think it's important that we fund the base budget, without a doubt. There are some enhancements that I think are very valuable, but I don't know that we can at this point in time fund those. If I were to advocate for any of them, it would be that dyslexia coordinator position that we've been trying to fund for a couple of years, but maybe there's another way to do that. I don't want to let that slip by, but because it's very, very important. But I think the base budget is what we need to fund.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Senator Sykes.
Thank you. I would agree with that. And I think the dyslexia coordinator, I mean, being part of hearing those reports from the task force and all of that, you know, that was the legislative task force. So that is our decision as the legislators, whether we want to fund this. And, you know, looking at ways that we could do this, I would be all for that, but I mean, that's a decision from the legislature. That's not the governor's decision. That's ours because of that task force.
Very good. I know there's a lot in there. We're coming in out of the cold off of a long weekend. We do have John Hess. John, is there anything you would like to say and address to the committee at this time?
Madam Chair, John Hess, Director of Fiscal Services for the Department of Education. Craig Nyanswander is also on the call, so I would defer to him to speak for anything that he would like to say on the agency's behalf.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Craig. Appreciate it. Did not know you were on, or I would have called on you. So welcome. Is there anything you'd like for the committee to draw to the committee's attention at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm certainly more than happy to have John speak on my behalf. That's not a problem. I don't know that there's anything I would add. You have the information that we presented when you had the hearing, and were kind enough to hear us out then and asked a few questions. So we would be happy to provide any additional information if you've had questions come up since that time.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Committee, this will not be the final opportunity for us to deliberate on this. I know Chair Baumgartner would like to continue this discussion when she is present. So if you would, in the meantime, look that over. Let us know if you have any other questions or comments. We also have on our agenda deliberation for the Kansas State School for the Deaf budget. So if you have that handy, we will also go through the same process. Any questions or comments on that budget? We also have Luann Barron. Luann, would you like to address the committee, draw our attention to anything at this time?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Great. Would you like to address the committee, draw our attention to anything in the budget at this time?
Sure. Not at this time necessarily. I did have the opportunity last week, excuse me, to discuss the budget enhancement. However, my testimony was cut short, and I'm not sure if you would like me to complete the testimony or if you would have any questions for me related to the enhancement request.
Committee, do we have any questions at this point? Luann, would you like to continue on those enhancements so then we have some opportunity for question?
Do you want me to go through the entire thing or just repeat the ending of the presentation at the point that I was cut off the last time?
If you could please pick up where you left off. I do see we have a couple of questions, so we'll want to get those in. So if you can just pick up where you left off last time, that would be great.
Okay, I'll just summarize. So this is an enhancement for the language assessment program for $466,658. And to give you some other information about the results of the previous assessments that have been completed. In the 2020 report, it does show a continued decline in deaf and hard of hearing children being able to meet those language milestones. And I wanted to emphasize, without the additional funding, we would not be able to continue those assessments with children who are deaf and hard of hearing throughout the state. We want the intent is for us to be able to assess 250 more children. And again, it is a statute or an obligation on our behalf on our part to be able to do this. And so the request is that you would consider that enhancement so that we can further monitor and provide support to deaf and hard of hearing children ages birth to 8 throughout the state.
Okay, Senator Dietrich.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, so some information came to my attention earlier today about that language assessment and how it can be funded. It is in statute, but there is an opportunity through our Tiny K program to reimburse some of that funding for those, even though the School for the Deaf would be taking the lead on that, doing the assessments, that funding can be allocated through that Part C Tiny K network. And the other piece of this is because all of these students have IEPs, there's a mechanism by which they could be funded through KSDE. So I think we maybe have a little disconnect on the assessment itself, which is critically important, and the funding mechanisms that are available without us approving an enhancement right now. I think that conversation needs to take place with those two funding opportunities for this assessment. And it's true, it's in statute, but I think we've got two other ways we can look at providing some funding for them. It just needs to, that whole pathway, that whole discussion needs to take place.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions, comments on the budget? Senator Petty.
My only question would be, so today, are we thinking about passing these budgets out?
No, we are not. We're going to have final action later in the week. So there's still time to ask questions and get some clarification.
So I'll just mention as part of that process, because as we're looking at and deliberating, you know, when it comes like to this budget, we can make a recommendation to accept the governor's recommendation for the budget, and with for example, the enhancement being looked at the omnibus, and that would then give them time to provide or to look into those other funding sources.
Anybody else on any of the budgets we've talked about today? Yes, Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I would like to know, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to know about some of the alternatives for funding that were mentioned. Curious.
Certainly. Senator Dietrich.
Sure. So just in some conversations with KS, with some folks who have more information on these opportunities, it appears that the Part C Tiny K network is involved and can be a part of this billing process as they do their language assessments for those under the age of 3. And then when you're over the age of 3, you've got IEPs in special education. So you've got that opportunity to bill for those services. So even though the School for the Deaf will be providing the services, they can bill either KSDE or through the Tiny K Part C grant to receive funds. I don't know exactly what that looks like, so the fact that we could perhaps add that to omnibus once we find out what those mechanisms look like makes sense, because nobody's disputing the need for this assessment. I mean, that's critically important. It's just how do we fund it? And there may be, we don't want to duplicate an effort if there's another way to do that.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else? Okay, I believe that was all on our agenda for today. Thank you for joining us WebEx. Thank you for being here in person, and we are adjourned. Thank you.